Hi, everybody. I'm going to be sharing today 6 reasons why you might be in a cycle of dating emotionally unavailable men. And before I start, I just want to say that there is a big difference between attracting emotionally unavailable men and actually dating them, loving them, and chasing them. Because the truth is, of course, when we look at the dating pool, especially if you're 30 plus, there are a good portion of men and women who are emotionally unavailable, but may be fun, charismatic, successful, kind people, handsome, beautiful. And just because these people are in your sphere doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. Your job is to filter them out and, frankly, for you to not be pulled or drawn to them, especially if you are looking for an emotionally intimate, committed partnership. So I just want to put that over there because I do see a lot of people shaming themselves from going on dates and, attracting emotionally unavailable men because there is so much rhetoric around you are essentially you attract who you are a reflection of what you attract, law of attraction. And while I think there is an element of truth to that in certain ways, for the most part, no matter how emotionally available you are, no matter how healed you are internally, it's just inevitable that some of these emotionally unavailable men or women are going to be in your field. So I want to put that just over here to begin with. And now I want to talk about the 6 reasons why you may actually choose to date, or you may fall for, or maybe even chase emotionally unavailable partners, specifically in this case, men. The first reason is that they're reminiscent of our caretakers. And so, if you are familiar with the book Getting the Love You Want by Helen and Harville Hendricks, they introduce a concept called Uramago. And essentially, what they're asserting is that we will subconsciously choose a partner who represents our caretakers who did not meet our needs in order to replay out our childhood to finally get that love, approval, attention, safety that we were craving. And so, of course, your parent is your attachment figure growing up. And then when you are an adult, you choose a new attachment figure, which is your partner. And so, yes, it is very common that they marry each other. That's why, you hear things like, you're going to marry your father, stuff like that. So your imago is essentially the compilation of your two caretakers, and that includes positive and negative personality traits and behaviors often. And so what I've found is that a lot of women are seeking out these emotionally unavailable partners because when you think about the types of fathers that our generation, I was born in 1992. I'm 32 years old. So that generation of fathers, many of them were very emotionally distant, right? It was a little bit more traditional where typically the man, the father was going to work and he would come home and have dinner and, maybe wouldn't have that much emotional capacity for his children. And also, men of that generation, again, my father was born in 1956, they didn't have necessarily a lot of emotional literacy. So, whether they were, it wasn't really necessarily their fault that they couldn't necessarily emotionally connect with their children and often their wife. It just wasn't part of their toolkit. And so, as a result of that, many women of my generation are seeking out these emotionally unavailable men that are representative of their fathers to replay out that childhood and finally get the love and approval that they were craving. So, as one of my clients said, that sounds like a terrible strategy. Yeah, of course it is, but all of this is happening at the subconscious level. And so it's actually in many ways fully out of our control. The second is that you have some subconscious belief that you need to work for love. So this once again is going to go back to your childhood and you can think about, okay, was there anywhere in my childhood where I felt like if I did certain things or, yeah, certain behaviors or I succeeded in various ways, if I worked really hard, often this actually comes up with my clients with school. But even if maybe again, your parents were a little bit disconnected, distant, distracted, if you had to really work to get their attention, and when you did work really hard to get it, they finally gave you that attention, gave you that approval, love, or whatnot, you essentially learned that you need to work in order to get love. And these beliefs, these are old beliefs, right? Like these beliefs form when you're typically somewhere between the ages of 0 to 7, but up till 14. And when you are in that age range, you are essentially just collecting information and data like a little sponge because you're trying to make sense out of the world and you're trying to figure out, okay, like what do I need to do to get the love and safety that every child needs in order to survive? And so you start to construct narratives about what that actually looks like. And so that one is really common where many people have that belief, even though it's, of course, irrational, that they have to work really hard to get love. And so then that is applied to their adult romantic relationships. And so that's kind of all they know, right? That's just like the way that they believe that love and relationships work. So for them, when you bring in somebody who is emotionally available, it actually seems unavailable, excuse me. It actually seems quite normal that you have to work really hard. You have to do all of these things to like win him over, to get him to like you. You know, it's like, oh, of course, he's a hard egg to crack. Like it's going to take a little while for him to open up or take a little while for him to commit, or perhaps like he plays hot and cold, but that's normal. I just need to work harder in order to finally get that commitment, get his full love for me. And it can, of course, be like a really vicious cycle because perhaps you do get some of that love and approval, and then he, distances, he disconnects in some way. And that feels terrible. That feels like your childhood wound is getting repoked again. And your subconscious strategy just rises up of, okay, we just need to work harder because last time when we worked hard, we did get what we wanted. So that's what causes you to go into that space too of like over analysis and trying to figure out how to get him back, get, whatever the connection you had before to get it again. And the reality is, you shouldn't, of course, have to work hard for love. Like the right person actually is going to love you unconditionally for who you are. And it isn't going to be all this work. In fact, relationships truly can be easy when you're with the right person who truly is emotionally available. The third reason is that you might have a savior complex. So, for those of you who are familiar with the idea of savior complex, it's essentially that you have this like urge, need, desire to fix others in order to prove that you are worthy or to compensate for some like flaw or defectiveness that you think that you have within yourself. So, I often actually see people that are in the healing space, people who are healers, therapists, coaches, they often have a little bit of this savior complex where, yeah, they derive their worth from being able to help fix and save others. And so obviously an emotionally unavailable partner then becomes very appealing. They become this project that they see, oh, here's somebody that I can fix. And again, like once that person may show some glimmers of healing, you start to it starts to become very addicting because you're like, oh, that was me. Like I got them to open up. I got them to do that. I'm worthy, right? And they shut back down again. And then it's just that again vicious cycle of trying to help fix or save them. The fourth reason is that they embody something that you desire. So, this is also something that's very common. I don't think it's talked about enough, but often we choose partners that make us feel whole. So, they often embody certain characteristics, behaviors, or lifestyles that we desire within ourselves, but we haven't yet fully embodied, or perhaps we're repressing for various reasons. There could be elements of shame there, or there could just be fear in actually having this lifestyle, having these traits or characteristics. And so, particularly for emotionally unavailable men, I'll see a couple of things. Often I notice that emotionally unavailable men have lifestyles that are really fun because they're not necessarily like looking for committed relationships, but they are still getting some of that feminine energy through adventure, um, travel, just having like really fun experiences, maybe like just, going out in the town all the time, or maybe too just like, yeah, keeping things like really light and spontaneous. And some of them also have been really successful from a career standpoint, right? Like all their energy is directed towards their career. So some of them might be, entrepreneurs or artists, or maybe are just really successful in the corporate world. And so those various lifestyles can be very appealing to a woman who maybe desires that. Maybe she desires that fun and spontaneity or career success in various ways, that travel, that financial abundance, but she hasn't yet actually created it for herself. So she will seek it out through this emotionally unavailable man. And of course, that could also extend to men who are available too, right? We often seek partners who embody something that we desire, whether they're emotionally unavailable or not. But I do just see this quite a bit with emotionally unavailable men who tend to have a lot of those characteristics of, yeah, fun, career success, artistry, entrepreneurship, spontaneity, et cetera, et cetera. When you think about actual traits, I also see this in terms of often really emotional women will seek out emotionally unavailable men who embody this like feeling of groundedness, of lightness, again, of fun. And it can be really appealing for a woman who is really anxious, emotional, in many ways overly connected to her emotions. It can actually just feel really good to be in somebody's presence who has that level of groundedness. And again, that often comes because they're disconnected from their emotions, right? So there are issues with that. But really, like the goal here would be to create more of that groundedness within yourself so that you're able to emotionally regulate on your own and not need to seek out partners that are balancing you to such a degree. The fifth is that it can feel safer to be with an emotionally unavailable person. And I think this is a really, really big one where in many cases, a lot of us truly, as much as we think that we desire this really deep, intimate, connected partnership, there is a huge aspect of ourselves that feels afraid to be fully seen in a really intimate way, to have to actually share our flaws and for somebody to, yeah, like really see who you are at the core, because that is what a truly intimate relationship is, right? Like, a man who truly is available and is like tuned in is going to notice aspects of you that maybe you don't feel super comfortable sharing or showing, you feel ashamed of in various ways. And so it can be much safer to be with somebody who really is keeping things a little bit more on the surface, like isn't like laser focusing into all the aspects of you, good and bad, right? Like they just keep things a little bit, again, more surface level. There also tends to be less conflict in these relationships too. They don't go as deep. So there isn't that level of potential, dysregulation that comes with conflict. Those types of like relationship challenges that are again are inevitable if you want something actually intimate and close and deep and real and available. Yeah, it comes with stuff like conflict. It comes with stuff like having really tough conversations and having to be really open, honest, and vulnerable with each other. And so being with somebody emotionally unavailable can actually feel so much safer. And I don't blame anybody for this at all. Like I was definitely in a lot of these relationships exactly for that reason, because I just in many ways did want to keep things kind of like fun, light. I didn't want to have those hard conversations because they did create so much dysregulation in my body. Again, even though there was this other part of me that, of course, deeply desired like true intimate connection. And then the last reason is that you are also emotionally unavailable yourself. And that's kind of similar to what I just shared there, but I'll just add another element that often when you often a lot of women think that they are emotionally available because, again, they desire a deep connection and they feel their feelings so deeply. But truthfully, a lot of us are somewhere on the spectrum of being emotionally unavailable in various ways. And so, some examples of being emotionally unavailable are one, like you are disconnected, or you are avoiding looking at the depths of your emotions and your true vulnerabilities. So when uncomfortable feelings come up, maybe you just disconnect or distract yourself from them, or maybe you go into an over-analysis mode where you're Googling things like, why do men pull away, instead of actually looking at that part of yourself that is anxious and scared. And sometimes perhaps maybe you will end up just like crying on the couch and telling yourself all these negative stories. That is still disconnected in various ways because that's actually not really even getting to the truth of what you're experiencing. It's more so in that case that you're just kind of in your own stories and narratives. So really being emotionally connected with yourself means going into that aspect of self and seeing it and being with it and reparenting it, because those are inner child parts, and then moving through it, right? And being able to actually hold yourself and create emotional resilience after being triggered in some type of way. If you are also somebody who is judgmental or critical of yourself, yeah, that also is a huge indicator of being emotionally unavailable, because emotional availability to yourself means that you hold self-compassion and that you actually you don't judge yourself harshly. You're very understanding towards yourself and not judgmental when you mess up, or are having a tough time breaking some type of behavioral cycle. You actually, rather than beating yourself up, judging yourself, gosh, like when are you going to figure this out? You actually know how to hold yourself and emotionally regulate yourself during that. And again, hold a lot of compassion towards that part of yourself. And if you are able to do this with yourself, then you're able to do it with a partner. But I find that if you're not able to do it with yourself, that is when it can be also more challenging to do it with a partner. Or you can also sometimes go the other extreme where you just make lots of excuses for the partner. But if you really want an emotionally available relationship, that means that you, again, have to be able to be emotionally available towards yourself first. And when you really master this, that is when you're going to naturally connect with somebody who is equally emotionally available. If not, what I do find is there is some type of energetic match with somebody who equally is judgmental and critical towards themselves, which then will be deflected onto you, and somebody who is disconnected from their emotions again. So you end up kind of in this disconnected partnership that ultimately typically is going to blow up in flames. So, how do you actually like heal all of this and shift your internal landscape so that you are in a space of emotional availability, in a space of wholeness and resilience, so that you can attract somebody who is at that level and, in fact, no longer crave or feel connected to people that are emotionally unavailable? Because that's the truth, right? Like, that's actually the goal, is to not feel connected to somebody who's emotionally unavailable, like to feel like, okay, this is like, a cool person perhaps, but this isn't somebody that I feel drawn to actually be in partnership with in any respect. And in fact, I'll say that's when I knew that I healed, when I would go on dates with guys who are emotionally unavailable and be like, this is a lovely man. He has so many qualities I enjoy on paper, yet I actually don't feel in my heart or body that I have any real connection to him, because I can tell that he's emotionally closed off. And I want that type of partnership. I'm open and available for that. The way that you actually get to that place is by doing subconscious healing work. So, in all the examples that I spoke about, there are these different aspects of yourself. There are all these like little inner child parts, or inner teen parts, or inner young adult parts from our past that have been wired in certain ways to seek out emotional unavailability. Again, whether it's because they're reminiscent of your caretakers, whether you believe that you need to work hard for love, whether there are aspects of yourself that are being repressed. The savior complex example. So if there's an aspect of yourself that desires to fix or save somebody else, if there's parts of yourself that are afraid of being with somebody emotionally available, because that means being seen, it means communication, honesty, vulnerability, conflict, and lastly, like if there are parts of yourself that are not compassionate, that are critical, that are disconnected, right? So we have all these little aspects of ourselves, and they are within our subconscious bodies. They are not part of our conscious minds. And so it's extremely hard to be able to talk your way out of these patterns. Your subconscious is always running the show. It's a very instinctual part of us. So it will just seek out these partners time and time again. It'll feel connected to these partners. It'll desire these types of partners, and it will hold on to dear life for these partners, because in many ways, this is what it's programmed to believe that love is. It is what it's programmed to believe that safety is. Safety is in familiarity. So, in order to actually break these patterns, we need to go to the source, which is the subconscious. And we actually have to work with these different aspects of ourselves, these different parts, in order to heal them and to nurture them and see them and to show them a new way, to actually let them know that we don't need them to protect us anymore, and they can actually take on a new role for us. But that role is not the role that they're currently playing. And so if you're familiar with IFS, internal family systems, parts work, and hypnosis, those are some of the different modalities that I use to bring clients through actually healing these various aspects of self. And really exciting, for the first time ever, I'm going to actually be releasing this material in a course format to make it more accessible to people. And so I'm actually going to have different recordings, hypnosis, parts work, and IFS all kind of intertwined in order for people to actually do this work on their own for a much more accessible price, of course. And so in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be opening up the door to my new course, which is Breaking Free of Unavailable Men. And it's going to be a 5-week course, most likely. And it's going to be incredible. I'm really, really excited for it because I think that this material is so important. And I feel so passionate about this subject because I was in these relationships for so many years. And when I was able to really break free of these patterns, I found somebody who was emotionally available. We're together today. And it's the partnership that I always dreamed of, that's, safe and deep and exciting and all the things. And I want that for you too. And so if you recognize yourself in these patterns, you need the support, you can sign up for the waitlist at the bottom here. And I will be offering an exclusive early bird price to anybody who's on that waitlist once the doors open in a couple of weeks. So I hope to see you in there. And that is all for today.